Now on 960 The Patriot, it's the Middle East Radio Forum. Your chance to talk about the turmoil in the Middle East. Questions are welcome at radioforum@aol.com. That's radioforum@aol.com. Now your host for the Middle East Radio Forum, Meir Jolovitz.
Hi. Welcome to Middle East Radio Forum, the weekly program unafraid to tackle the issues of the day. Ours is the radio and internet broadcast which offers a bold and unapologetic view of Middle East affairs. At Middle East Radio Forum, we recognize and readily identify the struggle between competing civilizations, ideologies, and cultures, between Western values and those dedicated to upending them. To frame it otherwise is to be dishonest, and the greatest form of dishonesty is self-deception. My name is Meir Jolovitz. I'm pleased to co-host this show normally on alternate Sundays with attorney William Wolf. Today is May 8th, 2022. This program can be heard live anywhere in the world on our website, www.middleeastradioforum.com, or at www.960thepatriot.com. Also, a reminder, this broadcast can be heard again when it's repeated on Saturday night at 9 p.m. And now to the troubled Middle East. A few days ago, Israel celebrated its 74th birthday as a modern Jewish state. In reality, and others have said as much, Israel is really 3,000 years old and 74 years young. For 7 decades, Israel has suffered the slings and arrows launched by an implacable enemy. And for just as long, the world, which includes Israel's so-called friends, has compelled Israel to demonstrate a willingness to compromise, while no reciprocal action is demanded of its adversaries. This maddening illusion that peace is somehow possible with those dedicated to your demise is governed by an insane and misbegotten formula that Israel gives and the Arabs get. It's an illusion that leads to self-delusion. As we face our detractors, we remember what Albert Hubbard once stated: genius may have its limitations, but stupidity is not thus handicapped. Middle East Radio Forum is here to provide a wake-up call. Most of our listeners, as you know, are certainly advocates of a strong and secure Israel. Still, notwithstanding the obvious truth that underscores the dynamics of that conflict, many of Israel's advocates are unable to simplify what others present as a complex issue. It is not. There is nothing at all complex about this conflict. First of all, let's avoid the deceitful and dishonest description of the Arab war against Israel or the Muslim war against the Jews as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. To surrender to that narrative is to fall victim to the purposeful manipulation of language as the very vehicle by which we play into the hands of our adversaries. Another example of this is the dangerous attempt to bamboozle language by calling the Temple Mount by the Arabic Haram al-Sharif rather than the Jewish Har HaBayit. Let's not fall prey to the attempt to redefine this truth. For anyone with a brain and a pulse, the study of the conflict in the Middle East is an easy one. It's the basis of the Arab-Israeli conflict 101. The Arab-Israeli conflict is about the refusal of the Arab or Muslim world to accept Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. Period. Instead, we're spoon-fed a misbegotten, a misunderstanding. Disinformation seems to be the operative word these days, of a conflict in the Middle East. It is not one of territory. It is not solved by the old territory for peace formula. The conflict in the Middle East is not about the borders of Israel. It's about the existence of Israel. We've said it before, but it continues to boggle the mind. Bogus negotiations as part of the next chapter of a fraudulent peace process. American pressures against Israel will be the next chapter of George Ball's infamous "Let's Save Israel in Spite of Herself" school of diplomacy. And people less intelligent than we continue to tell us that the need for this misbegotten peace process becomes necessary by employing this false narrative that murderers can also be peace partners. Last month, PA President Mahmoud Abbas announced again that he proudly supports a pay-for-slave program, paying terrorists and their families with fungible monies from the United States, Europe, and yes, even the charlatans in the Israeli government. And everybody yawns and sleeps. stupidity does indeed exist. It has deadly consequences, and it is winning the day. We who protest, we remain in the minority. And now, from Israel, we have a special guest who joins us to discuss a political and moral crisis in the Middle East. The topic of today's presentation is going to be the real apartheid state, fighting for Jewish rights in Israel. Now, most of you know that I usually choose to go solo. Today, I make an exception because of the urgency of the message that needs to be heard. The message today is brought by our guest from Israel, Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld. Melissa has a rich resume, both academic and accomplishments outside of academia as a political activist, an organizational power broker, sitting with various boards and committees, a journalist, and a frequent commentator on global security as involves Israel, the Middle East, and is a consultant of a number of pro-Israel advocacy groups. Her resume is long and quite impressive. I'll offer some of that resume a little later when we come back from one of the commercial breaks. It's my pleasure now to introduce our guest today. So, Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's just cut to the chase. You penned a very powerful piece, I think less than 2 weeks ago, which was titled Ascending with Sanctity, Why I Pray on the Temple Mount. Can I ask you to begin with your thoughts about this and why the Temple Mount all of a sudden is front and center?
Sure, I'd love to. I penned two pieces back to back. One was Ascending from Slavery, Why I Fight for the Temple Mount, and the other one was Ascending with Sanctity, Why I Pray on the Temple Mount. And I felt that both arguments were equally important to share because both arguments play into one another. I am a frequent visitor to the Temple Mount. I try to make as many as 9 aliyot or ascensions to the Temple Mount a week. And to me, it is the fundamental human rights fight of my generation. The Temple Mount is kind of the last remaining piece in the future of Israel. And I go to the Temple Mount because it's not just about a place where we can so-called start a fight, as the press will have you believe. And it's certainly not just to poke my eye in the rest of the world or the Arab community that lives in and around Israel. But the Temple Mount is a fundamental bond to the Jewish people. We have been there since the time of Adam and Eve. They made the very first sacrifice after their fall from grace. We have built 2 temples there. We have had the greatest minds, the greatest rabbis, the greatest leaders of the greatest generations going there unbroken since the dawn of biblical man. And now it is my generation and it is our time to continue that chain, to keep going. Because if we don't keep showing up, the police and the government will not believe that it is important enough to reclaim, as we did during the war in the 60s, and they will continue to allow this quote-unquote mission creep by the Palestinian Arabs and their Jordanian supporters in taking over part of Jerusalem. And we're talking about a small site, a relatively small site in the center of the capital of the Jewish state that is controlled by another country. I would ask your listeners to imagine what it would be like if we allowed Britain to still control northwestern Washington, D.C. I mean, would anyone think that would be fundamentally correct in terms of sovereignty and rights? And so I go with a group of committed activists. There's about 30 or 40 people, I would say, who show up every single day. And I should caveat that with Jews are only allowed on the Temple Mount Sunday through Thursday for approximately 4 to 5 hours a day when there is not a security situation, when there is not delays, and when the police do not randomly decide to prevent our ascension for whatever reason they decide that day. And so this is perhaps the most important part of Jewish history, right? This is the moment where we are going to decide, are we going to be a sovereign state? Are we going to provide a safe haven for Jews around the world? And is Israel going to determine itself as being a leader in the Middle East, in Western democratic states, and fulfill its promise, which it has always been, which is really to be a light unto the nations and a light unto the world?
Wonderful. Let me ask you, because you made reference to the restrictions that are placed recently while interviewed by CNN's Christiane Amanpour, who's a notorious anti-Semite. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, while speaking about the Temple Mount, asserted that Israel is, and I'm quoting, ensuring freedom of worship to all religions. Is that true? Yeah. And would you comment, please?
Sure. So I watched that popped up all over my social media, and it popped up because there were all of these Israelis and Jews in the diaspora applauding Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Kol hakavod, mazel tov, good job. He's on there. He's taking Christiane Amanpour to task, telling her, we're going to protect the fundamental right to worship for all religions. And he followed that by saying something along the lines of, it is my responsibility as Prime Minister of Israel to protect Muslim freedom of worship on the Temple Mount. Yeah. And I remember I froze. I could not believe the words coming out of his mouth, because all I could think about were, what about my fundamental rights as an Israeli, as a Jew? Because I'm up there. I don't remember the last time I saw Naftali Bennett up there. I don't know if he's ever ascended. But what I do know is that my freedom, my fundamental human right to worship, is not protected on the Temple Mount. And my fundamental human right as a Israeli citizen in the Jewish state is not protected at this particular site, which, as I mentioned before, has an unbroken bond to the Jewish people since the time of Adam and Eve. And whether or not you believe in the Bible, whether or not you choose to be a religious person, the facts of the matter are extremely clear. We built a temple there centuries before the Arabs showed up and built their mosque there. It wasn't until 638 AD, after Christ, that the Temple Mount was seized by Arabs. It wasn't until 692 that the signature gold dome was installed, and it wasn't until 715 AD. That's not that long ago. 715 AD, in this time period, that the mosque was completed. Before that, 2 synagogues had stood there. Centuries of Jewish worship and control over the area had existed, but now the entire world believes, and our government, and Naftali Bennett included, that the only person whose rights should be protected up there are the Muslims. Listen, I'm not that great at math. Yeah, I've never been that great at math, but I'm fairly certain that my claim, the Jewish claim to that area, is certainly precedes that of the Arab claim. And more importantly, even if you don't want to talk about who's right, who's wrong, who came first, who came after, the difference between Jewish control over the Temple Mount and Muslim control over the Temple Mount is that Muslims do not allow other people to worship there. And as it stands now, the religious people may disagree with me. If the Israeli state had control of the Temple Mount, there would be little to no restrictions whatsoever on anybody visiting at any time to worship however they see fit, beyond some sort of major security situation in which we were protecting life. Because we know that Jews care more about protecting life than the Muslims care about protecting life. And if Jewish control of the Temple Mount was to happen today, we would see freedom of worship, we would see peace and security. But instead, our government concedes and gives to a community of people who raises Hamas flags on the Temple Mount, who riots on the Temple Mount, who destroys the Temple Mount. I have been up there both during and after the riot. Okay, I was up there the other day when 200 Arabs descended upon my group of 30 with only 5 police officers really around us to protect us. And I can tell you that there is no way that you would ever see Jewish worshipers do anything of the sort to any other group of people up there praying. I saw piles, huge, massive heaps of antiquities just destroyed. We have a habit when we walk around to point out to new guests to ourselves. We keep track of the antiquities up there. We try to look at the shards of rock. Does that look like it's part of a pillar, or does that look like it may have been part of an arch? And all of these unique little pieces that are scattered about the Temple Mount, which we're not allowed to touch or move or go near, but we keep track of just for our own sake, for historical purposes, out of our deep pleasure that we derive from ascending to the Temple Mount. And what they have done is they have taken and they have destroyed them. They have smashed them. The Antiquities Authority hasn't gone up there and cleaned it up. Okay, up there today, I can tell you that during Ascension today, it was reported that just heaps and piles of antiquities that the Palestinian Arabs used to build fortifications and launch at the Israel police have just been piled up into corners into trash heaps. You're talking about thousands of years of history that can not only tell us the story about us and our people, but tell us the story of humanity. And if you care about humanity, if you care about the world, if you care about history, if you care anything at all about the evolution of humanity, even if you're a scientist, you must believe that this is a complete atrocity against mankind. We have lost so much in these recent riots. It is unbelievable. When I went up there during the riots, my first ascension during the riots, I honestly wept. I wept not because I was scared or saddened by the riot. I wept over the destruction and the history and the things that we will never learn about our past.
Yeah, I apologize, Melissa. We do have the first commercial break coming up in 30 seconds. It is truly remarkable. And the destruction that you speak about, which is well recorded, is obviously an attempt by the Muslims to destroy history as it really happened. If we destroy it, then maybe people might not believe it. Anyhow, we have a commercial break that's coming up in a few seconds. When we come back, once again from Israel, we have a wonderful guest, Melissa Jane Kronfeld, doctor, quite accomplished, who's an activist, who's a player, and who's a warrior. Commercial break. We'll be right back.
Dassault and Macros are my business and personal CPAs for a good reason. Prompt and accurate work means I trust them with all my accounting needs. Conveniently located just off the 51 freeway at 3519 East Shea Boulevard, Suite 122, give them a call and see what they can do for you. 602-996-8885. That's Dassault and Macros, 602-996-8885. There are a lot of great Mexican restaurants in Phoenix, but I am very particular. When I want the best Mexican lunch or dinner, I head straight to Mi Patio on the southeast corner of 7th Avenue in Osborne. They serve all your favorite dishes and only use pure vegetable oil in their cooking. Mi Patio is sure to become your favorite Mexican restaurant, too. That's Mi Patio Mexican Restaurant on the southeast corner of 7th Avenue in Osborne. Tell them that William Wolf sent you there. Watermark Wealth Strategies and Watermark Wealth Planning Offices at 11333 North Scottsdale Road, Suite 295 in Scottsdale. Has been a loyal sponsor of this program since its start. They specialize in wealth retention, estate, and legacy planning. Watermark has been a leader in the Valley, and its members have been together for over 17 years. Founding partner Carmen Cercone has over 36 years of experience in tax, investment, and estate planning issues affecting retirees and their assets. They offer comprehensive planning that has helped assist families through the process of identifying client objectives and concerns and constructing a strategic plan to address tax, risk, and legacy issues. Consultations are complimentary, and we encourage you to contact Allison Porter at 480-442-3989 to schedule. Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC, an affiliate of Kestra Investment Services. Watermark Wealth Strategies, LLC is not affiliated with Kestra Investment Services or Kestra Advisory Services. How do you choose your accident injury attorney? If you need heart surgery, do you choose your surgeon from seeing an ad on TV or a billboard? Of course not. Choosing your attorney also should not be done so casually and without thought. I do not advertise on TV or billboards, but only on this radio show. I give all clients personal attention. Your phone calls are never intercepted by some untrained assistant. I take all calls if I am available or return calls at my earliest opportunity. I was named Trial Attorney of the Year by the Arizona Trial Lawyers Association 2 years ago and have 48 years of experience. So think about it and choose your accident attorney wisely. My number is 602-279-1914, and my office is located at 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203 in Phoenix. I personally welcome your call. Again, 602-279-1914.
You're listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on 960 The Patriot. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free, 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome at radioforum@aol.com. That's radioforum@aol.com.
Now your host for the Middle East Radio Forum, Meir Jolovitz.
Hi, welcome back. Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld with us today from Israel, an activist, our favorite type. Melissa completed her PhD at Rutgers University's Division of Global Affairs, having previously received a BA with International Relations from George Washington University, a Master's in Global Affairs from New York University, and a Master's in Global Affairs also from Rutgers. Melissa has lectured on American foreign policy and also national security. As a journalist, editorialist, subject matter expert, she was featured, and I'm looking at a list which would take me 3 hours to read, of radio, television, and other social media and everything. It's just absolutely impressive. In 2017, and forgive this editorial comment, in 2017, Melissa was a candidate for the New York City Council, which she lost, and I am Israel's gain is New York's lost. I'm happy for that. She remains actively invested in local and national political campaigns, including with American politics, American politicians. Not now, but we will also get to the fact that in 2012, 10 years ago, she launched Passions for a Purpose, which is a full-service social impact and philanthropic development agency, which I very much want to talk about. We'll do that after the next commercial break. Let me give a little perspective of what was said right before we broke. Hebron was the Jewish capital of the Jewish people until King David established the capital in Jerusalem. That was 3,000 years ago. Now, anyone who's opened the Bible understands this. To clarify, Islam became a religion 1,600 years later. Now, Tel Aviv, juxtaposition. Tel Aviv was founded in 1909. It means that it's 113 years old. And yet the leftists in Israel and the liberal leftists in America who seem to claim to have some kind of stake in the game with Israel seem to suggest that Tel Aviv belongs to the Jewish people, but are hesitant to defend our people's right to the home of our patriarchs and matriarchs in Hebron and others. Melissa, your thoughts, please.
Well, when I traced my genealogy, I found out I was a member of the tribe of Dan, which had the Tel Aviv area. So I would say the Tel Aviv area might be a bit older than 100 plus years. That notwithstanding, it really is remarkable. I do a lot of work in Hebron. I'm very blessed to work alongside Rabbi Yishai Fleischer, who's the international spokesman for the Jewish community in Hebron. And so I get to spend a lot of time there, probably as much time as I spend on the Temple Mount, maybe a little less. But I spend a lot of time there, and we're doing some really, really great work there. And, Hebron, to me, is as fundamental and critical a site as the Temple Mount. There's lots of things to be said about Jerusalem, but one of the things that Rabbi Fleischer always points out when I bring new people to Hebron is how old and how ancient Hebron is, how our forefathers traveled to Hebron, implying that it was already a city when the time that they got there. It was already a city when when God selected the Jewish people and Judaism was coming to the fore. There's probably nothing that breaks my heart more beyond the Temple Mount than what I see in Hebron. You're talking about one of the most ancient Jewish cities in existence. And we have completely, totally, and 100% sacrificed it. We've given it to the Arabs. That is it. We don't fight for it. We don't care for it. People don't visit it. When I tell people in Tel Aviv, they say, "Well, what are you doing today?" Well, I'm on my way to Hebron. And the answer is always the response is always the same. Why? What do you mean, why?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so fundamentally shocking to my conscience. Why? Because, for centuries we have gone to Hebron. For centuries we have lived in Hebron. For centuries we have prayed in Hebron. The founders of the Jewish faith are buried in Hebron. And we act like Hebron is a dot on the map, on the outskirts of central Israel. And I think that when the Jewish people, both diasporic and Israeli, and the Israeli government itself, starts considering Hebron as being as fundamental to the future of Israel, as is Jerusalem, as is the Temple Mount, as is the high-tech center in Tel Aviv, as is the wealth in Caesarea, as is the upper middle class in Haifa, as is the farms in Gush Etzion, as is the growing settlement community now in the Golan. That is when we're going to see a real turn in this fight. I don't think that there has ever been a time where I visited Hebron where I haven't been rushed out of this place or that because of a riot, because of a security incident, because of a shooting. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's just, I'm repeating myself, but it's shocking to my conscience the way that we have sacrificed Hebron. Now, with that said, there are a fair many good people, great people, amazing people in Hebron fighting the good fight.
The best of the best.
Ben-Tzvi Gopshin, the best of the best.
The best of the best.
I mean, absolutely. MK, Itamar Ben-Gvir, Ben-Tzvi Gopshin, Yishai himself, Noam, the rabbi there. There are some amazing people down there on the front lines, but I had the very unique and blessed opportunity to spend a Shabbat in the home of MK Meir Ben-Gvir and his family not too long ago, and he lives along with the rest of the Jews in the center of Hebron, and it is I don't know if I could describe it adequately for your audience, but it is a single street. It is a single street. Imagine a street in New York with apartments or brownstones on either side. One of those narrow streets, maybe between Park and Madison or Lexington Third. For those of you that have been there, there's one street, and there's a gate at one end and a gate at the other, and on both sides guards. Israeli Army or Border Patrol. I don't remember which. And it is one street, and that is where all the Jews of Hebron are basically living out. There are a few other places that we have. There's the Beit Schneerson, where I was blessed recently to erect a massive menorah that's lit up year-round. But we are talking about a fundamentally tiny community of Jewish people that is surrounded completely by Muslims. And not just any sort of Palestinian Arabs and/or Muslims. This is a constant state of war, and then you walk from. I remember on Shabbat when I walked with MK Ben-Gvir, when I walked from his home down the road that Abraham would have walked, down the road that King David would have walked to the cave of the mothers and the fathers. It is so fundamentally awe-inspiring and so beautiful and so stirring to your soul. You feel the gravitas, the weight of Jewish history, of Jewish responsibility, right? Because Jews are not chosen because we're special. We're chosen because God has given us the additional burden to make the world a better place. So, it says in our prayers that, you thank God for giving me burdens every day. But that burden is lost. It is lost to the general Jewish people. It's lost on the diaspora, and it's most certainly lost to our government, who looks at Hebron and the Jewish community there as being a thorn in their side instead of the freedom fighters that they really are.
I am so pleased, Melissa, that you lost in 2017 for the New York City Council, because instead of dealing with issues which really matter, that give purpose, meaning to our existence, you would have been dealing with sanitation in Israel. New York.
Listen, I'm a lifelong New Yorker, I do have a little bit of heart in New York. So if New York needed me to deal with sanitation, I would have. But I will say, in retrospect, having it been a few years and me now having gotten over the loss, the pain of loss, I am extremely grateful because I know that this now is what was meant for me.
Yeah, wonderful for us. Next commercial break is coming up in 30 seconds. For those of you in Arizona, we ask you once again to let the sponsors of the show know that you endorse their products or their services. It's because of them that we're able to present this to you as we do now, well, for 19 years. Middle East Radio Forum, your voice to the truth. Boy, do the leftists hate when we say that. Anyhow, commercial break coming up. When we come back, once again, Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld from Israel.
Friends of the Israel Defense Forces offers educational, cultural, recreational, and social services that provide hope, purpose, and life-changing support for the soldiers who protect Israel. FIDF is the sole organization authorized to collect donations on behalf of the soldiers of the IDF. For more information or to make a donation, please visit FIDF.org or call 323-843-2690. Watermark Wealth Strategies and Watermark Wealth Planning offices at 11333 North Scottsdale Road, Suite 295 in Scottsdale. Has been a loyal sponsor of this program since its start. They specialize in wealth retention, estate, and legacy planning. Watermark has been a leader in the Valley, and its members have been together for over 17 years. Founding partner Carmen Cercone has over 36 years of experience in tax, investment, and estate planning issues affecting retirees and their assets. They offer comprehensive planning that has helped assist families through the process of identifying client objectives and concerns and constructing a strategic plan to address tax, risk, and legacy issues. Consultations are complimentary, and we encourage you to contact Allison Porter at 480-442-3989 to schedule. Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC, an affiliate of Kestra Investment Services. Watermark Wealth Strategies, LLC is not affiliated with Kestra Investment Services or Kestra Advisory Services.
Gilligan's on Maryland, on the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland, is much more than just a great Shell station and mini mart. Great cook-to-order food, different flavors of coffee and tea, beer and fine wine, including kosher wine, round out a wonderful one-stop shopping experience. A loyal sponsor of Middle East Radio Forum. Check them out in the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland in Phoenix. That's Gilligan's on Maryland. Phone number 602-277-6269. Are you vegetarian or vegan? Boy, do we have the restaurant for you. Veggie Village at 1255 East Northern in Phoenix, a terrific restaurant. Chicken, shrimp, calamari, mutton, and fish, all made from plants, a delight to your taste buds. This is a really exceptional restaurant. Closed on Sunday, but otherwise 6 days of terrific dishes. That's Veggie Village, 1255 East Northern, or call them at 602-944-1088.
This is William Wolf. My weekday job is a personal injury attorney in practice since 1971. I have been named Trial Attorney of the Year by the Arizona Trial Lawyers Association. My office is at 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203 in Phoenix. There is no charge for our first meeting, and I take all cases on a contingent fee basis. Call me at 602-279-1914. That's 602-279-1914. I look forward to meeting you.
You're listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on 960 The Patriot. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome at radioforum@aol.com. That's radioforum@aol.com.
Now your host for the Middle East Radio Forum, Meir Jolovitz.
Hi, welcome back. Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld joining us. I do want to say just a quick aside. Today is Mother's Day. We wish all mothers a very happy Mother's Day. I remember on this radio broadcast a few years ago, I'd mentioned that it was Mother's Day I was on, and some progressive, what a euphemism for nonsense, some progressive voice called up and actually took me to task and suggested that I was out of line in pretending that not all or in suggesting that all mothers were the same. And he argued, of course, that all mothers are the same. And I told him that I disagreed, that when you have a mother who straps a suicide bomb belt around the waist of an 8-year-old child, as had been the case 2 weeks before, by the way, and sent her into the marketplace in order to blow up innocents, no, I can't imagine I can't imagine another religion glorifying that type of motherhood. No, not all mothers are the same, and I think it needs to be said. And one other thing that I must throw in for this radio broadcast. I do this, I think, once a year. Last year at this time, I did report an important scientific study that came out at the time, and I was proud then to announce that after years of research, it's been proven conclusively that people who listen to this program on a regular basis are more intelligent than those who do not. And this is the good part, and they're better looking too. Now, this has been scientifically proven. Melissa, as an observer of Israeli affairs, understand, well, I should say any observer of Middle East affairs, of Israeli affairs, understand that the Temple Mount has been used by Israel's enemies, we see it just the last couple of weeks, as a political tool to delegitimize the Jewish state. During the 19 years when the Temple Mount, Har HaBayit, was under Jordanian occupation, and I'm talking about between 1948 and 1967, not a single Arab leader visited Jerusalem, nor the Mount, nor the Temple Mount. What does that tell us, Melissa?
Well, I think it tells us a lot, but right before I answer that question, I just want to say Happy Mother's Day to my mother, Jane Kronfeld, who is a really, really incredible mom. She was there for me and my little brother through our entire life. There wasn't a moment that she didn't sacrifice. There wasn't a day she didn't pick me up from school, even when I begged her not to in my teen years. So Happy Mother's Day to my mom. And, we thank her for you, by the way. Oh, yeah, in more ways than I could even express in the time that we have left. And you made a really interesting point about mothers and suicide belts, because it reminds me of Golda Meir, our only female prime minister and a great mom herself, who said peace will only come when the Arabs will love their children more than they hate us. And I think that really defines and has always defined the fight here in the Middle East. But you talked about Israel as enemies and delegitimization and visiting the Temple Mount. The interesting thing is since the Abraham Accords, which whether or not you're a Trump supporter, and full disclosure, I am a Republican who voted for Trump the second time. I'll leave the first time up for your listeners' wonder. I cannot tell you the amount of phone calls I receive from people in the Arab community or people or friends in the Arab community who ask me to what it would take, or can I take their Arab friends to Temple Mount? And I point that out only because it is interesting that they're not reaching out to the Waqf, right? They're not reaching out to the Jordanians. They're not reaching out to the Arabs and saying, how can you take me to the Temple Mount? Because they're not interested in how the Arabs are controlling the Temple Mount, because the Palestinians and the Palestinian Arabs generally have proven time and time again, despite all the support they receive from the surrounding Arab communities, that they just want to poke their eye in everybody's face. They're not interested in the support. They're not interested in having their state. They're just interested in killing Jews. And if they had really wanted to have peace, they really wanted to have their state, by now they probably could have. But time and time again, and Arafat, obviously saying no to Jerusalem when he was offered it, greatest thing that ever happened to the Jews. But, that in and of itself is proof positive that we are not, and you said in your opening, we're not dealing with partners in peace. We're not dealing with a group of individuals that are prepared to make the sacrifices that it takes to have a state. I used to teach my students when I was a lecturer at Rutgers University that sovereignty is a responsibility, it's not a right. You do not have a right to a state, but you have a responsibility to maintain it in the modern state system when you do get it. And that responsibility is something that the Palestinian Arabs clearly do not want, are unwilling to take the mantle of. And if given, I'm not sure that they would be able to really maintain it, because it's just not something that that they desire the way the Jews have for centuries desired to have a homeland.
That's for sure. By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt. We are coming upon the third and last of our commercial breaks. When we do come back from that commercial break, we'll have the longest segment at which point I want to talk about a couple of issues, including the things that you've been doing, the causes that you've championed, other than that which you've already articulated quite nicely, and also how people can reach out, find out about you, your work, and what they should be doing themselves. Commercial break. When we come back, more of this important stuff.
This is William Wolf. My weekday job is a personal injury attorney in practice since 1971. I have been named Trial Attorney of the Year by the Arizona Trial Lawyers Association. My office is at 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203 in Phoenix. There is no charge for our first meeting, and I take all cases on a contingent fee basis. Call me at 602-279-1914. That's 602-279-1914. I look forward to meeting you.
Gilligan's on Maryland, on the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland, is much more than just a great Shell station and mini-mart. Great cook-to-order food, different flavors of coffee and tea, beer and fine wine, including kosher wine, round out a wonderful one-stop shopping experience. A loyal sponsor of Middle East Radio Forum. Check them out on the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland in Phoenix. That's Gilligan's on Maryland. Phone number 602-277-6269.
Cherry Blossom Noodle Cafe has terrific sushi, salads, rice and noodle dishes, soup, and even great pasta. On the northwest corner of 10th Street and Camelback, it will become your favorite Asian restaurant. A loyal sponsor of Middle East Radio Forum for more than 10 years, it is simply the best place for a great Asian lunch or dinner. That's Cherry Blossom Noodle Cafe on the northwest corner of 10th Street and Camelback. Tell them that William Wolf sent you there. Telephone 602-248-9090. Texas Grill on the northeast corner of Bethany Home Road and 16th Street has been my favorite steakhouse for 31 years. Great food, especially their chicken fried steak, as well as daily specials in a comfortable setting, keeps me coming back for more. You just have to try it for yourself. Also a great Sunday brunch starting at 10 in the morning. That's Texas Grill on the northeast corner of Bethany Home Road and 16th Street. Give them a try and you will have a new favorite steakhouse too. My name is William J. Wolf, host of Middle East Radio Forum since 2003. As you may know, I am a personal injury attorney in practice since 1971. I was just awarded the high honor of Trial Attorney of the Year by the Arizona Trial Lawyers Association. I handle all types of personal injury and wrongful death cases. Unlike many other attorneys, especially the high-volume TV advertising attorneys, I do go to court if necessary to obtain the best possible resolution for all my clients. It is often impossible to obtain the best possible result if your lawyer does not have the reputation of being willing to go to court on all matters. If you have a claim, please call me for a free initial consultation at 602-279-1914. My office is at 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203 in Phoenix. Again, call 602-279-1914. I look forward to meeting you and making sure that you obtain the best possible recovery. Call 602-279-1914 and please continue to support Middle East Radio Forum.
You're listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on 960 The Patriot. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome at radioforum@aol.com. That's radioforum@aol.com.
Now your host for the Middle East Radio Forum, Meir Jolovitz.
Hi, welcome back. Last segment, long segment. Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld from Israel. I just want to throw this in quickly. We'd mentioned we were talking about Mother's Day. Professor J.J. Jones, her seminal study in the human condition, mentioned that every one of us, at least as far as we know, has had or has a mother. But not all mothers, we said, are created equal, this nonsense of moral equivalence. And we cited the case of the Muslim mother who strapped a bomb belt around the waist of her young daughter, sent her off into the marketplace, is not the same as the mother who throws her own body in front of her children to shield them from the terror of such savagery. So let me just read you a quick headline from 2 weeks ago, April 26th. Mother of martyred Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist. Martyred, of course, means he is dead and he was a terrorist. Headline, mother of martyred Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist Mohammed Jajour boasts, I will be happy if all my children and grandchildren are martyred for the sake of Allah. And the story was that the mother of this, of a martyred Palestinian terrorist, whatever, Mahmoud, on April 16, 2022 interview with Al-Quds, Al-Yum Television, which is Islamic Jihad in Gaza, said that she always prays for her entire family, including her grandchildren, and prays that they be martyred for the sake of Allah. She said that this would make her happy. She's proud that her son was martyred, and she loved the path that he chose. Now, according to an online Palestinian Jihad report, he was killed in 2009, January 2009, after killing 2 Israeli soldiers. So no, not all mothers or grandmothers are the same. Some are savages, seemingly proud savages. We were talking about, back with Melissa, we were talking about the Temple Mount and the language that's used to describe the conflict. And quite often when we surrender, in fact, on the occasion of the United States establishing its embassy in Jerusalem as opposed to Tel Aviv, the messages that came from the Trump administration, yes, we are big fans of Trump, the best president that Israel has had and will ever have. But they, in presenting their thing, they referred to the Temple Mount and they added, or otherwise known as Haram el-Sharif. And that was said by the president in a video thing. It was said by Jared Kushner. It was said also at one time by Mike Pompeo, all good friends of Israel. But my God, they're playing the game and the narrative belongs to the other side. Your comments, Melissa?
So wow, I have so many comments. I did my dissertation work on discursive methodologies, which, not to throw big words into the mix, but for your listening audience, I actually did my dissertation work on how we use words and how words matter when creating national security policy. And you said Trump was the greatest president for Israel, and yes, thus far, I would say maybe thus far. But the greatest president for Israel will be a Jewish president, a Zionist president.
A Zionist, because we're not talking about Bernie. We're not talking about Bernie Sanders or Chuck Schumer or Jerry Nadler. Okay.
Right. And I have issues with Jerry Nadler, indeed. But no, the greatest president for Israel will be when we have our first Jewish president, and B'ezrat Hashem, that day will come, and we'll have that president, and he will really stand with us. But language really matters, and the very fact that the president, our thus far greatest president for Israel, use that language shows how everyone, our Israeli government, the American government included, constantly bows down to the Arab people. And Ben Shapiro says it best. It's this belief that we have to pretend that people's problems are due to other people's, what other people have done to them. And we never say to any group of people, whether, it's a minority group in America or pregnant men now, in the United States, which is apparently a thing, we never say, put your big boy or girl pants on and then fight for what you believe in. And the story of Israel, and I use the word story because we're talking about narratives and language and discourse here. The story of the Jewish people is one in which you see, no matter what has happened, no matter whether it's men, women, or child, that they overcome, they endure, they put their big boy girl pants on, and they move forward and they fight, and they never ask for anyone to give them anything. And the foundation of the Israeli state, which just celebrated magnificently 74 years, is really part of that story, right? That's the magnificent nature of it. The Jewish people are really the only people in history who have never asked for anything for anyone, and have always fought for what they needed. And we could see this time and time again, right? If you look from an outsider, you say the Jewish people have always been separated from other people. They've always been a people within a people, and that's their problem. No, that's not their problem. That's their maintenance of their self, of their history, of their beliefs, of their endurance. And the creation of the State of Israel is the story of a people who said, you have given me nothing. You have separated me from all societies that I've lived in. You've restricted me time and time again, no matter what I gave, your state, your empire, your people, however I served your princes, your kings, your emperors, no matter what I have ever done, no matter what I've contributed to your society, no matter how I've served in your armies, in your administrations, in your navies, in anything. We have never asked for anything but to allow us to be us. And the foundation of the Jewish state is really the essence of that narrative, of that discourse, that if you believe in something so strongly, and you know, we're in the middle of counting the Omer, which your Jewish audience will understand, but it's this time period where we count 49 days in between two holidays. But in the middle of counting Omer, and I read something today in the counting of the Omer, and it was about what are you willing to give up for your beliefs? And the Jewish people are the only people in history that have been willing to give up everything, every time and time again, to maintain the sanctity of what they believe in. Now, you can apply that outside of Israel, but when you apply that inside of Israel, what we see are people like myself, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but what you see is people like myself and the 30 or 40 activists that I mentioned earlier who are going to Har Bayit every single day that we are permitted to. We are committed to ensuring that what we believe in is exactly what we are willing to sacrifice everything for. Because don't for 1 second not believe that every single time we ascend to Har Bayit, every single time I walk from the Jaffa Gate at the outskirts of the old city, through the old city, through the Arab quarter, through the shops that you may have visited if you've ever visited the old city. Do not think for 1 second that I don't believe at any moment I could be, or I could not be a victim of a crime. I could not be stabbed or assaulted or you know, any number of terrible, horrible, awful things. But I am willing to take that walk every morning, and I leave my house in Tel Aviv at 5 a.m. to be at the Temple Mount by 7 so I can be among the first ascenders. Do not believe for 1 second that we are not willing to sacrifice everything to ensure the sanctity and the continuity of what we inherited, of what we've been given by God, of what we know is our birth, and what we know is our future. Because if you believe in anything, then you know in the end that it will be okay, that the outcome will be right. Even if you're not there to see it, that what you have done has been critical and will matter most for the person who takes up the mantle when you're gone.
Well said. Well said. I guess you don't have to be a professor at the University of Chicago to understand sui generis. You are indeed. Let me do this quickly. Well, in the few minutes that we have left, your resume is rich with various political affiliations on behalf of a strong and secure Israel. You started a wonderful project a number of years ago called Passion for a Purpose. Tell us about it and where the audience can hook up with some of the work, find out what you've done, follow what you do. Please. Sure,
absolutely. So Passion for a Purpose evolved out of my personal philanthropic work, serving on boards, serving in my community. I realized that there was a critical need for people who wanted to problem solve without a pat on the back, who wanted to look for the most cost-effective solutions, and who wanted to recruit people who were capable but perhaps had never been asked to solve the most pressing issues of our day. And so we created a social impact consultancy in the vein of Boston Consulting Group or McKinsey, but which would allow any individual, nonprofit, community initiative to have and be able to access the solutions and resources that they needed without having to pay $1 million to to do so. And we celebrate 10 years this year. So that's very exciting. And in that capacity, we have incubated multiple projects, of which many that I've referred to tonight, I'm really a part of. And some I would share with your listening audience is, we recently launched a platform to destigmatize ascendance to the Jewish Mount. Those of you in your audience who are Jewish, there's a lot of debate in the Jewish community, and I'm kind of doing a little insider baseball right now, but there's obviously a lot of debate in the Jewish community about whether or not you can ascend. And, if you really understand the halakha or Jewish law around it, you know that ascension can happen. You can go to the Temple Mount as long as you stay within a certain area. And so me and my partner, Rabbi Yehuda Levi, we launched a platform to not only destigmatize ascension to the Temple Mount, but allow people to come up and experience a religious, magical, spiritual, awesome, incredible moment for themselves and their family and their friends without having to worry about all the things that are connotated with the Temple Mount, including the politics and the arguments over where we cannot walk. And so that project is called High on the Har, and you can find that online on social media at High on the Har. The website will be launching soon. It will be the same, highonthehar.com. And that project is really special to me because in that capacity, I get to do what I do every day anyway, which is ascend to the Temple Mount, but I get to bring lots and lots of really incredible people with us. Other really cool projects that we've launched, we're working on a really great project right now with the Office of MK Itamar Ben-Gvir called Red Alert South. Red Alert South is to draw attention to what's going on in the southern district of Israel, which is really basically Hebron and downwards into the Negev, and to really bring awareness to the ongoing issue of Bedouin clan violence and Arab violence down there. You can find that online at Red Alert South IL, as in Israel, Red Alert South IL. And really what we're trying to do is raise awareness and essentially, in the long term, build a legal defense fund to help Israeli victims of Bedouin and Arab violence, because it has gotten so bad down there that people are they're not calling the police anymore. And when they do call the police have to decide which crime they want to attend to because it's gotten so fundamentally bad.
Melissa, I have to. Yeah. I apologize. The clock ticks.
No.
Wait. It's been scientifically proven, as I've said before, that these are the fastest 57 minutes of the week. I do want to say something today because it happened to be topical the last couple of weeks. We talked about the turmoil, specifically the Temple Mount. There are other issues which talk about Jewish destiny, the fate of Israel vis-a-vis its so-called friends and its enemies. I refer here, of course, to issues such as the misbegotten expectations of any tangible results from any peace process or the fraudulent two-state illusion, and so on and so forth. And the fact, it's a point that I make quite frequently here, the fact that so many of Israel's so-called friends are really not. I'd love to think that we can invite you back in the coming weeks and address some of those other issues as well. Okay?
I'd love to. There'd be nothing that would give me greater pleasure. You just tell me when and where you need me.
I certainly will. Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld, it's been a pleasure. As I said, I normally solo. You've given me reason to solo less. Thank you so much. Wish you and your endeavors the very best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless your audience. God bless the state of Israel, and may we only see peace in the coming days, weeks, years, and future generations.
God, am I happy that she lost the New York Council. Never mind. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. Thanks so much. Next Sunday, which is May 15th, attorney William Wolf will host Yoni Titi for an hour-long discussion of current events in Israel. The subject: how did we get here, and what do we need to do to get where we belong? It's an interview that you certainly don't want to miss. In the meantime, tell the sponsors about the fact that you appreciate the fact that they sponsor the show. It allows us to stay in the air. Every week, this program, as you know, stands apart by reminding our audience that the basic element that underscores the Arab war against Israel is that undeniable fact that the Muslim world has not come to terms that Israel has a right to exist. We say it time and again, and it's something which is too often lost on us. It is that simple, and it is also undeniable. Anyone who thinks otherwise hasn't been paying attention. But worry not. Listen to Israel's enemies, and they will remind you of that fact every week. Don't lose your resolve. Wise words indeed. The deception must be exposed. As we end the show every time, remember, the only people mad at you for speaking the truth are those living a lie. Keep speaking it. This is Meir Jolovitz signing off, reminding you that William Wolf will be back with us next Sunday. Please be sure to listen in.
Touch the sky.